And with that being said, if I can ask Mr. Al-Ghwell if he'd like to take the floor.
Please open your mic. Your mic is closed.
Yes, hello.
My apologies. That always happens to me. I said thank you very much, Joe, and thanks to the Organization for Human Rights in Britain. And hello to everybody who's joining us, both speakers and the audience, whoever is watching. And wherever you are, depending on your time zone. I'm in Washington, D.C., and it's 12 o'clock here in the afternoon. The issue of what Israel has been doing in general in the occupied territories since practically its inception, and then even so after 1967, is nothing new. And I think it is something that the world has become almost callous about, and there's hardly any reactions from anybody anymore about all the abuses and violations that are taking place against the Palestinians almost on daily and weekly basis. Some of it makes it to the news whenever there is some dead or serious violence, but the abuses are continuous, and most of them are not really apparent. Palestinians face these abuses on daily basis, going to work or going to school or trying to find their food, or the humiliations they endure every day is a continuous thing. And that's really a statement on multiple levels. It is a statement on the real failure of the international order in general to deal even with the most famous, if not the most urgent conflict that we've had in the last 70, 80 years in the world. And it also speaks about how the balance of power determines even the basic human rights of people. And there are differences between humans. Some humans seem to be worthy of more sympathy and action than others. It's also a statement about the courage and the endurance of the Palestinians. As a friend of mine here, a scholar told me, an American scholar told me once after she visited the occupied territory, she goes, after seeing it on the ground, I'm no longer shocked about the acts of violence that we hear about on the news from the side of the Palestinians, or what they've been calling terrorism. I am actually shocked how little of it is actually happening, given the conditions under which they live. I think right now there's really no use for Palestinians or for anybody who's sympathizing with Palestinians to wait for any reaction from the international community or the international order. I think their reactions have amply showed that they are not interested, they don't care, that their way of dealing with this is really based on the issue of power that Israel exercises, and especially on the United States government. I think the protection that Israel has enjoyed from various U.S. governments since its inception has given it almost impunity against anything it does. Really, at this point, it doesn't matter what Israel will do or can do or is willing to do. They will always be protected, mainly by the United States, but also to a great extent by the international community, at least by its silence. Add to this picture, I think things have gotten far more complicated, because now you have a number of Arab governments, unfortunately, willing to sell essentially, I mean, let's not be so diplomatic about it, but sell the Palestinians and their cause in exchange for some, in my mind, trivial gains in politics. Many of these Arab governments that got into this, what's called the Abrahamic or the Abraham Accord, have done so simply because they figured that the easiest way to control Washington or to get to Washington is through Tel Aviv. And they have used the Israelis as a way to influence Washington when it comes to various issues they care about. That was led, unfortunately, by an Arab government in the Abu Dhabi. That's the government that worked very hard publicly and privately to lead other Arab countries into recognizing Israel and giving it sort of this almost political and legal and a moral blanket that allows it to say, well, we are having peace with the Arabs. The Arabs don't really, they're not complaining about what's happening. We are fighting for our existence and all of the stuff we all hear. I think it has become a very major contribute. This Arab regional politics has contributed to a great deal for that. I mean, we saw today that the foreign minister of Israel is in Sudan, for example. We know that Sudan recognized Israel in exchange for basic funding for food. Morocco recognized Israel officially after all these years, even though there was always some kind of a relationship, because it wanted the United States to recognize its territorial claims on Western Sahara. UAE recognized Israel because it wanted to get all kinds of technology to essentially control its own population and interfere with all kinds of Arab activists around the Arab world who are calling for democracy and a change. I mean, we've seen them finance, arm all kinds of characters in Libya, my own country, and a retired general who bombed the capital for over a year without anybody talking. In Tunis, they interfered with elections in Sudan, in Somalia, in Syria, you name it. It has been their agenda to try to undermine any of this public upheavals that happen in the Arab world demanding democracy and the rule of law. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I think Israel is really wasting a lot of its energy on Arab governments. Nobody can ever claim that these governments represent their people in general, but also specifically on the Palestinian issue. I think anybody who talks to even people in Abu Dhabi will bitterly complain to you about what their government is doing by recognizing Israel. They're afraid to say that publicly, of course, because that means they will disappear. But I think the issue of peace in general for Israel is always going to be elusive, because the problem of Israel is not really with Arab governments. These governments are willing to do anything. They've demonstrated that they're willing to commit atrocities themselves against their own people. Their problem is with the Arab public. And I think as long as Israel does not deal with the Palestinian issue in a proper way, the Arabs as a population will never forgive Israel, and they will never have peace with Israel. So yes, you may have an embassy like we see in Cairo, where it's empty pretty much, nobody's there, with just a flag on a building. But that does not mean there is a peace between Egypt and Israel. The same thing pretty much everywhere. The populations reject that simply because of what they see is happening to the Palestinian people. And I think any search for peace for Israel has to start with their dealing with the Palestinians. That's the only way they're going to gain any respect or acceptance or tolerance even from the rest of the Arab world. The issue of violence and what is happening, I think the Palestinians need to recognize and know with no doubt of any kind that the international order is not going to give them justice. The international order does not respect their humanity. No international organization is going to ever care about them. And that they are basically subject to the whims of how radical this Israeli government or the next one. We are now experiencing the worst radical government in the history of Israel itself. And I think that's going to continue. There has to be another way. I think the only thing that people who sympathize with Palestinians need to do is to figure out specific tools that they could advise them with that can circumvent all of this nonsense in the international order, and give them tools that they can themselves use with the support of others in Europe, in the United States, in the Arab world, and the Islamic world in general, that they could help them defend themselves and take legal action or demonstration or civil disobedience or whatever to actually have their voices heard. Other than that, I don't see any real solution to this. There is never going to be an Israeli that's going to be put in front of a court. There is never going to be any international court or legal or agreement that will ever somehow help the Palestinians in the face of Israel. And I think the best thing we all can do is figure out ways to help them other than, just complaining about it and putting their story on the news. It's been happening 60 years. Nothing happened. I think it's about enough time to really reach the conclusion that we need another way. These are my 2 cents so far.